was just mad the whole time. Truly, I couldn't wait for it to be over, which is why I started bending some of the rules, because I just was like, I'm miserable. And I know it's a mental challenge and I can stick to something, trust me. But like, I just felt like it was not sustainable and I don't feel like it's a healthy exercise. And I do potentially think that if you are a male, this might work for you, but as a female, I really don't recommend it. Welcome to the Design of You podcast. My name is Leah. I'm a human design expert, spirituality coach, wellness guru, and manifestation powerhouse. My podcast is here to educate, inspire, and uplevel your life. I love sharing with you the ins and outs of the human design system in a practical, empowering, and embodied way. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the show. Welcome back to another episode of The Design of You. I'm so excited for today's episode. It's highly requested and it's on my experience and my journey with 75 Hard. So if you're not familiar with what 75 Hard is, it's essentially this 75-day challenge that a guy named Andy Frisella, I'm not sure if I'm saying his last name correctly, created. There's a book on this. I have not read the book and I actually did not consume any of the content that Andy, I guess, has created with this. But how I discovered 75 Hard was actually through TikTok. So probably in 2020 or 2021, this challenge really took off. And I believe that it started from this guy talking about how he guarantees that no one would be willing to do this 75-day challenge. Here are the rules. You have to exercise for 45 minutes twice a day, one of them having to be outside. You have to read 10 pages of a nonfiction book per day. You have to drink a gallon of water. And you have to follow some sort of diet within your own parameters. And you have to take a progress photo every day. The last thing is there is no alcohol. Really, this challenge is all about mental toughness. It's meant to be something that pushes your growth edges and gets you out of your comfort zone. And the whole thing, they kind of say, is it's not about essentially losing weight. It's more so just this mentality and this discipline that you're supposed to gain from this. And so essentially, the way that I've heard this story is that this guy was talking about this on a podcast and basically said that no one would do this challenge. And I think people started doing it and then documenting their experience on TikTok. And then this sort of challenge just took off and people started doing it all over the world. And, soon enough, it became something that I was interested in. Now, aside from 75 Hard, something about me is that I love challenges. I love different things like this. I've done Whole30, I've been plant-based, I've done Smoothie Project, I've done the animal-based diet, I've done medical medium. I have done lots of different cleanses and diets, and I just really enjoy doing stuff like this. It's not for everyone, and I'm not giving any medical advice, and that's a disclaimer for this entire episode. None of what I say is medical advice or the end-all be-all of what you should do in your life. This is just my own personal experience with a challenge and a diet that I tried. So that being said, I decided last year that I wanted to try 75 Hard, and actually Xander was really interested in it, and we attempted to do 75 Hard actually last year in February. And if you've been here for a moment, I feel like I've talked about this a couple times. I definitely have talked about it on my personal page, but my dog had emergency surgery twice in a 2-week span, right at the beginning of March and then mid-March of last year. So just about a year ago. So we started 75 Hard kind of in the middle of that, and it just became impossible with just some of the mental burdens that we were dealing with. So we started it and then quickly just didn't do it. And I've always been interested in doing it. And I just could never find a 75-day period where I felt like 75 Hard would make sense for me to do, because there was either a wedding coming up or an event, or just something where I didn't want to have to work out twice a day and eat a certain way. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if I said this, but with the 2 45-minute workouts, one of them has to be outside. That is a really challenging aspect to this entire 75 Hard, which I'll talk about when I get to that point. But essentially, what I'm trying to say is that I've been interested in doing this for a while, and this is just something I like to do. Why I like to do these different challenges is because I feel like you learn a lot about yourself. you'll often hear in terms of, what are the right foods you should eat and different things. Oftentimes people recommend not doing those tests where they look at what you're sensitive to, those food sensitivity tests, because they can show triggers for things that you're actually not allergic to. And so they'll often say, do the elimination diet. And so for me, as I think about my body and in my health, I always like to think about things as like experimenting with it. And so I've never fully done an elimination diet, but why I brought that up was because I feel like doing these challenges is almost like an elimination, but it's also a way to just kind of learn about yourself. I have learned so much about my body through 75 Hard, and I've continued to learn so much about myself through any of the challenges that I've done. I shared a little bit about this on Instagram, and I'll try to highlight this on my personal page, but I shared what my current eating philosophy is, and maybe I'll share that later, but I shared a little bit about my lessons that I've learned from just these different things that I've done. And so now that I have a podcast, because with those other challenges that I've done, I don't think that I've had this platform, but now I have a platform to share a little bit about my experience. And here's the thing, I think that my take on 75 Hard is going to be different from what you may have seen or heard. And that's because I didn't have a great experience. And I don't think that I recommend doing 75 Hard for a certain group of people. So I put on Instagram a question box, and a lot of you submitted things that you want to know about my journey. And I also think that what I'm going to do is go through each part of 75 Hard, each of the rules, and then share my experience with each of these. I'm also going to share a little bit about Xander's experience, not fully because, I'm not going to speak for him, but I'm going to share just a little bit about both of our experiences together. And yeah, so first and foremost, today is March 19th, and I started my 75 Hard journey on January 2nd. And our 75-day mark was this past Saturday. And I could go week by week into this, but I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about the highlights and the timelines of things through my kind of story with it. So as I'm going through each of the rules with 75 Hard, I will bring up related questions. I have your questions here up on my phone that you guys asked me, and I will go through and make sure that those are answered. So starting with when we just started 75 Hard. So we started this right after the new year on January 2nd. And it was, just kind of like any New Year's resolution. I feel like you have a lot of energy and momentum towards your goals. And I have a lot of goals for 2024. And something about me is that I love New Year's resolutions. I love goal setting. I just think it's a lot of fun. And again, I like to push my growth edges and do little challenges. So for the new year, I always go pretty hard with my New Year's resolutions. Okay, so starting with the first rule, and that is the workout piece. So in 75 Hard, you have to work out twice a day, 45 minutes each. And that was initially the first challenge that I experienced in the first week of starting 75 Hard and in the first several weeks. And if you know, on Instagram, on my personal page, I was sharing daily pictures of what I was doing each day. And I thought this was fun, just sharing a little bit about what I ate, my outfit, what I did, just like little snippets into my day. And I initially started doing that to keep myself accountable because I knew that if I had people that could see my 75 Hard journey and wonder, where I was or what I was up to and how I was maintaining it, that I would continue to uphold, this sort of challenge. As you may have seen, if you follow that page, I ended up stopping that. I ended up not doing all of the 75 days on my Instagram, like documenting them. That's just simply because I had just a really busy start to the year. I mentioned that I like to set a lot of goals. Sometimes I like to set goals bigger than I can actually handle. I like to bite off more than I can chew. And I'm learning some pretty deep integrated lessons with that at the moment. But I ended up having to just pause on posting those, not because I still wasn't doing 75 Hard, just because there would be a day where I would forget to take photos of literally anything because I'm just living my life. So it became really hard to be present. I've been saying recently that I think influencers actually have one of the hardest jobs. And I know that's a hot take. And I know it's very subjective because everyone's opinions on what a hard job is are different. But I've been saying that because as I was trying to post every day and put stuff on my stories and also, work, have my business and my podcast and my job and everything else, And, I started the first day, I did a little document. I'll put links to this down below. I'll put links to my personal Instagram, and I'll also put a link to my TikTok page, but I TikToked literally one video and I wanted to do every single day, but holy moly, it took me so long to edit one video. So I have been saying that I think influencers actually have a pretty hard job in terms of how much of their personal life they have to share and how much documentation. You cannot be present as an influencer. But I digress. That's definitely just like a sidetrack. But I wanted to just say that if you saw my documentation and it wasn't because I ended this, it was just because life happens. And the other thing that kept happening was I would forget to post one day because I'd have a really busy day. And you would think that, I just like select the 10 photos and it takes 5 seconds. And it seems like that sometimes when you post on Instagram, and it can be that quick, but it wasn't. I was really intentional about what I was sharing and, what was interesting. And so there'd be days where I had no photos and I'm like, I don't know what to share that's interesting. So I'd put a quote or something random that I screenshotted on my phone. And then I was like, I feel like these are kind of stupid, So I just stopped doing it. And also not that many people were liking them. I don't know what it was showing in my feed or to other people, but I just stopped it altogether. I gave myself permission to do that. But that was my documentation piece, which we'll get to later as well. But moving back to just the workout piece. So working out twice a day is just a challenge. You have to not only do one outside, but you also have to, again, do one somewhere else. And so I am very fortunate that I own my own business. And so I kind of create my own schedule and I can fit things in when I want. And so that was a challenging part in the beginning because one thing about me is that I'm not very structured as a human being. I am just not a structured person. And it's really funny because in my human design, I'm not designed to be consistent or structured at all. 2 of my body arrows or variables in my chart actually are facing right. And so that means that they're more passive and that I am someone who doesn't do as well with consistency or routine. It's just not my vibe. And I've never been able to adhere to routines pretty strictly. I have rituals and things that I do every day, but routines is just not something that really works for me. And so the first thing that just became incredibly hard was the working out piece, was the part of having to schedule in this time. The other thing about me is that when I work, I like to finish things that I start. And so oftentimes I will get into like a wormhole of just like, I need to get this done and I'm going to work on it. And usually when work excites me, I don't want to put it away. So it's pretty normal for you to come to my house and see me just working in my office until 7 p.m. at night. Again, I've talked about this on the podcast before. I have a defined ego. I have a defined sacral. I am a generator. I have a defined root. So these are pretty normal things for me to have a lot of energy and like lots of output and commitful energy for sure. So when I have something that I'm enjoying myself with and working on, I tend to kind of work on it until I get exhausted, even if that means not sleeping at a certain time, even if that means, not moving or getting up. And so there are some unhealthy habits that I have from that I think 75 Hard, one of my biggest takeaways, this is one of my pros with 75 Hard, is that it really had me looking at my routine and my schedule a lot deeper, but that also brought up lots of feelings of shame and guilt and things. So with the working out twice a day, you really have to schedule your day around these workouts. And so even though I create my own schedule and, I have lots of freedom, as so it seems, but I actually don't allow myself to, bask in that freedom as much as you would think that someone who creates their own schedule would. I very much every single day, I get up at different times, but I do typically work out, and then I come home and I usually, have my matcha, eat a little something, go to my office, and I am working until the sun goes down. And oftentimes I'm working after the sun goes down. And that's just who I am as a person, and I enjoy that. And I also just love my business. And so with the goals that I set for the year, I was really finding myself struggling with the fact that I had all of these projects and things that I wanted to get done at the new year, but here I am doing 75 Hard, and I'm having to frame my day around these workouts and some of the other parts of 75 Hard, which I'll get into, that I'm not used to. And I don't want to put away work and stuff that I'm working on or that I'm working toward goal-wise for that part. And so that became my biggest challenge off the bat. I was like, okay, how am I going to fit these in? And I will say for me, what I did for my workouts was I would go to a class. So I've been doing yoga for years now, and I have had a Core Power membership, which is something that changed in 75 Hard. I also like to run. I've always been someone who's weirdly into running and I enjoy it. And then, I'll do little classes here and there, but that's typically my workout, running and yoga. And I got into Pilates during 75 Hard. So Pilates is now my favorite workout. And side note here, if you've never done Reformer Pilates, please go find a studio and do a class. A lot of studios will have your first class free, or you can pay, $10 or whatever it is in your area, but definitely go and try it. It's such a good workout. I was so intimidated by Pilates, and my friend Danny was like, you should go to Pilates with me. And I kept saying I was so interested and I wanted to try. Every time we talked about it, something kept coming up when we would book a class, but I also just kept getting really nervous, and I wasn't even mad that they kept getting canceled. But I did my first Pilates class and I was like, wait, I feel amazing. This is awesome. So I highly recommend Pilates. It has changed my body. It's changed everything for me. What I did throughout 75 Hard was either yoga or Pilates. And then my second workout was always a walk or a run, primarily just a walk outside. The other fortunate thing for me is that I live in Southern California. So the weather here is pretty warm all year round. It's also pretty average in terms of weather changes. Nothing is really extreme here. We don't get obviously snow, and we don't get rain and thunderstorms and hail and tornadoes and different things like that. The weather is always pretty consistent here. But I will say, of all the times I chose to do 75 Hard, it has been so rainy in Southern California, and it has been like this for over a year now. It's driving me nuts as someone who comes from, Michigan, where it's raining and snowing and all the things all the time, and the weather's never consistent. It's constantly up and down. During 75 Hard, that second workout of walking, it was pretty easy for me, but also in the challenge of this, there were definitely days where it wasn't nice out. And so the first thing that happened for me that was like really just a kick in the ass was just trying to get these 2 workouts in and just the universe testing me. If you listen to my 12-step manifestation episode, which we'll link down below too, I talk a lot about being tested by the universe when you're about to get something that you want. And so something that I think was happening to me was that I was being tested with really committing to these workouts. So I remember the first week I had a Core Power yoga class scheduled, and I wake up early, I go all the way to my yoga class, and typically if something's canceled, you get an email, there's some sort of notification, none of that. I usually have to leave a half hour before the classes start because it's a little bit farther from me. And so I literally get up early, drive all the way there, and there's a sign on the door that's like, class has been canceled. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So I was like, okay, being tested. And I ended up driving there was another Core Power that's like only 5 minutes down the road from that one. So I ended up driving to that studio, getting into a class, and I was like, I'm not going to let it stop me. So I can't be tested. And then literally a day or two after that, my family was visiting, and I was down visiting my sister who lives in San Diego area. I'm in Newport Beach. I'm an hour north from her. So I'm down there visiting her, and I was like, okay, I have to fit these 2 workouts in. My studios aren't here. So I'm on ClassPass. I go and get into this yoga studio, and I literally wake up. It's freezing out because it started to get really cold in California. I wake up at like 6 a.m. I drive to this workout class that I did not want to wake up and go to, get there, and literally the instructor just doesn't show up. So I walk in and I put my mat down, lay down, and the front desk girl is like, hey, I don't know if your instructor's coming. He hasn't showed up yet. And, there's 6 of us in this class, and we're like, okay. What do we do? And so we just kind of hung around. She's like, I haven't heard from him. I don't know where he is. And then he never ended up showing up. But I'm like, are you kidding me? And there's no good spots near my sister for ClassPass, like quick little yoga spots to jump into. I mean, there's lots of yoga studios, but just like not any good accessible ones that you can see online that are available. And I was in a time crunch too with stuff that we had going on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? So I ended up going back and doing a mat workout and then trying to fit in a second workout. And so those were just 2 of the ways that the universe tested me, and I actually shared those in a highlight on my personal Instagram. And then another thing that happened in my 75 Hard journey, so with my second workout being walking, I have a walking pad at home, or I should say I had a walking pad at home, which was my favorite thing to do with that second workout. And something I should preface by saying is I did bend the rules a little bit, and I know that you're not supposed to do that. So if you're like, oh my gosh, like she didn't even do the full 75 hard, I did pretty good most of the days. But I really think that when it comes to something like this, it's still such a challenge, and like you have to make it work for you. And when it came to the workout piece, working out twice a day was more important in terms of my body and what was my goals for my fitness and my health, more than getting outside in bad weather, because that was just me. So anyway, we have a walking pad. So a lot of times if I didn't take a walk outside, I would do my walking pad at home. It's usually in my office, or I'd have it downstairs in front of my TV. And so week 2 or 3 into 75 hard, I think it was week 3, and Xander would do the walking pad too at night. And our walking pad just like died on us. I guess it was relatively cheap on Amazon. So I don't know. We've tried to fix it. We have oil that we tried to put in there. We have taken the back off and messed with it. It did this a year ago. It broke down and somehow it came back to life. So we have our walking pad just like sitting up against a wall right now. And we've tried to use it maybe like 3 times since we put it up against the wall, and it's still not working, but I'm hoping that eventually it'll start working again. But overall, I need to get a new walking pad. If any of you guys have any recommendations for one that hasn't burnt out on you, that you actually use a lot, because a couple people sent me some recommendations and I was like, that's literally the one that I have that burnt out. So if you have any recommendations of one that you do use that hasn't burnt out on you, let me know, because I'm in the market for a new walking pad. So those are my challenges with the workout piece, is just fitting them into your schedule when you're used to operating a certain way, which again is the whole point of the challenge, and also just the weather and just things that happen outside of your control. My advice for anyone who is going through 75 hard with the working out is really schedule it out and just commit to it. And also don't push your body hard when it needs rest. So the other lesson that I learned is, as a woman, we operate very differently from men. So this is something that's also just challenged me mentally and also challenged my core values as a woman. I feel like I've seen a lot and read a lot about how most of the studies that are done in the world on our bodies and like our sleep cycles and things like that, they're mostly done on men. And so a lot of the research that we have from years ago were not on women. And there's a lot of emerging research that has come out around women and how much more sleep we need and how our cycles are just so much different and how we need to slow down in life and work out in different ways than men do. And I'm pretty passionate about that because I have noticed a difference in myself. Like when I try and operate like a man, it doesn't work for me. But when I operate just intuitively and in flow with my body as a woman, I truly feel like that's when I feel my best. And so it became a challenge a few weeks into the 75 hard when I started my period. Any men listening, grow up. I'm about to talk about a period. If that grosses you out, then again, literally grow up. But I feel like it really challenged me because it's okay to rest when your body needs rest. And so day 1 or 2 of your cycle, for me at least, I don't know if this is like this for other women, but for me, typically, I'm really tired and I need a lot of rest. It is like crime scene mode. That's what I usually say. I'm exhausted. I need to lay down. I need to take a break. I usually veg out, we'll eat comfort food, chocolate, and just chill. And I'm usually really okay with doing that when my period starts because my body literally is in what they call like wintering, where my body's in a season of winter and like coziness. And as women, anyone who's listening who has a period, you know that feeling where you just need to let yourself rest. Your back hurts. I mean, you don't even want to put anything tight on your body. You don't even want certain underwears or certain pants. You really just want to be in sweatpants and literally the biggest pair of underwear you own, the biggest sweatshirt because you're probably bloated too, and you have zits on your face, and you just feel overall like you just want to rest. And so the first day of when my period came, I was like, fuck this. It was raining outside. I was like, I don't want to do absolutely anything right now. All I want to do is lay around. So here's something that you'll learn about my journey is that there were days that I didn't do everything on the list of 75 hard. And what they say is when that happens is you're supposed to start from day 1. I did not do that because I find that an all or nothing approach for me is pretty toxic. And so if I had a day where I missed something, I just allowed myself to be like, okay, I didn't do that thing and no big deal. We'll start over tomorrow. And that came from some permission actually from lots of you guys who I was talking to about this in my DMs. I shared on my close friend stories about the first day of my period and how I was just like, I don't feel like doing anything. It's pouring down rain outside. I went and got a facial. I was like, I'm so tired. All I want is a piece of bread, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but I gave up gluten for my diet. And I was like, I just feel horrible. And someone's like, just stretch. And so my advice for the working out piece too is just give yourself time and space to do light things if you need to do light things. Like a walk is okay. Go do a walk on a treadmill or go do 2 walks outside. That is good enough. Do some stretching. Just moving your body twice a day is important. So if I were to do 75 hard again, and I definitely, which I'll talk about at the end, I feel like I'm going to do a version of this at another point in my life. You may have seen on TikTok people doing 75 soft or 75 medium. I saw 30 hard. People kind of have bent the rules. Now that I've done the 75 hard, I can definitely see how I would like to bend the rules to be a little bit more in flow with me as a person, but still be like very much a challenge. And one of them is just like 2 types of movement a day. Doesn't matter where, how, if it's inside or outside, just 2 movements a day. And so that was some permission I gave myself a few weeks into it, that I was like, if I just move my body twice a day, that's all that matters. I don't need to sweat every single time. I don't need to burn myself out, which now talking about sweat, that was the other hard thing. As a girl, I mean, not every girl's like this, but I certainly am. Makeup, hair, all of that becomes so hard when you're doing 2 workouts a day. I feel like I've showered more in the past 75 days than I ever have in my life. That sounds disgusting. I shower all the time, but I was showering 2 times a day, like even a couple times, 3 times a day. So the other thing that I did was if I went to the sauna or an infrared sauna, I counted that as a second workout. I didn't do that often because the infrared sauna really messes with my hair and stuff, makes me have to shower more than, or I should say wash my hair more than I typically like to in 1 week. But there were 3-4 times through 75 hard that I counted a sauna as my second workout because I still was burning several hundred calories and was sweating my butt off and was in there for a while. I typically do the infrared sauna for about 45 minutes to 60 minutes. So that's the workout piece. I feel like that took longer than I thought because they're all just related. So the second part is drinking a gallon of water a day. At first I was like, okay, it's not that much, but then actually drinking that much water, you find out very quickly that it is just so much. You know, something else that I mentioned just a little bit that I'm going to say a lot towards the end is 75 hard just proved to me how much of my design that I really am. This challenge brought up so much frustration and made me truly in my not self theme, which if you're not familiar with human design, we all have a signpost that shows us when we're in or out of alignment. And so for me, when I'm satisfied, that is a sign that I'm in alignment. And that's not for everyone. Some people it's about success, some people it's about peace, so on and so forth. And then when I'm out of alignment, frustration is what shows up for me. This frustrated me beyond belief. 75 hard did in so many ways. I truly felt like I learned so much about myself and my design by doing stuff so against my design. So drinking a gallon of water a day is hard. I have one of those simple modern, it looks like a Stanley, one of those knockoff ones. I like them better than Stanley's if anyone cares, but you can get them at Target. I'll link it down below actually. But anyway, so 128 fluid ounces are in a gallon. And so if I was drinking a 40-ounce water bottle, so I needed like 3.2 of those a day. So I would just aim for 3. And then I'm sure I drank more water in different parts of the day too. That seems easy, just like, oh, 3 of these, Stanleys, but it's also a lot of fucking water. And here's something medically about myself that I'll let you guys know is that I have a really small bladder, literally medically documented. When I was a kid, I used to pee in the bed all the time. And my dad had to take me to literally get an ultrasound when I was, 5 or 6. I remember it's one of my earliest memories of going to the hospital, literally like they do with pregnant women, like jelly on your belly. They had to look to see what was wrong with me because I would not go to the bathroom. I would hold my pee and pee in the bed constantly. And I just couldn't get potty trained apparently as a kid. And you know, it's funny now that I'm saying this out loud. Something that I used to say, my dad will say this, is like, I used to always say, I just don't want to leave what I'm working on. I don't want to leave what I'm doing. And now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm thinking about what I said earlier about my work and how I sometimes don't like to leave what I'm working on to do something else because I get so focused that, yeah, I think that that's probably also a part of it, because that's what I used to always say as a kid. I just don't want to leave. I used to love Dollhouse as a kid. I'm like, I don't want to leave playing Dollhouse to go, you know, to the bathroom. So I'd just pee my pants, which is ridiculous. But so what I'm trying to say is I have a small fucking bladder. I remember when I started my job in high school, I worked at this grocery store and I used to go to the bathroom a lot. And I remember my manager called me in the office and they were like, you go to the bathroom a lot. We notice that you leave your register. Why do you do that? And I was like, I have to pee all the time. And what I would do is I'd sit there at my register and they had free coffee and water and whatever else. And I would just like be drinking stuff all the time while I worked. But anywho, drinking that much water a day is a lot. And I already drink a lot of water in a day and I pee a lot in general. As Xander, when we sleep at night, I'm going to the bathroom like 3 times a night. Like, you will see me walking from the bed to the bathroom in the middle of the night a bunch. And I'm a light sleeper because of it. I always have to pee. I can't stand it about myself sometimes because like with travel or when I have to sleep somewhere else and there's not a bathroom, or like I'm worried about waking people up, it gives me a lot of anxiety, to be honest. But yeah, I notably have a small bladder. When they did that ultrasound, they saw that my bladder was smaller than normal. And that said, the gallon was like too much for me. And I have friends who are into health and wellness, and I remember bringing it up, like saying I bent the rules on that one too, because I just made sure that I was drinking, you know, a good amount of water per day. I wasn't gonna kill myself if I didn't have, you know, 3.2 of my, you know, 40-ounce Stanley cup or Simple Modern cup. I wasn't gonna just let myself be guilty for that. I was still gonna drink a lot of water because I already do drink a lot of water. But they were like, no, it's so healthy to have a gallon of water a day. Like, it's really good for you. But I don't know. I think that it can be good for you, but I also think go with what feels good in your body in terms of that. And so that would be my other advice moving forward when I do my own version of this, is just like aim to have like maybe 2 of those. I remember one of the nights I was in the hot tub, Xander and I went for a walk and we went into our hot tub at our apartment complex. And I was like, I'm going to bring my water jug and I'm going to finish this whole thing while I'm in the hot tub. And I remember walking home, and I don't know if this was in my head, but I didn't feel very good. And so I think that drinking too much water can also not be a good thing because it depletes all the sodium in your body. So I came home and ate like a pickle or something. So I was like, I kind of feel like weird all of a sudden. I could like jump up and down and could hear the water in my belly. And I didn't like that. And I also may have seen this video. I didn't see this during 75 Hard, but I saw this video not long ago of this girl who literally almost died from drinking so much water from doing 75 Hard. So I was like, I don't know, I'm getting in my head, but I don't feel normal right now. So I just gave myself permission to drink as much. I probably drank close to 3 of those a day, but if I only had 2, then that's fine. Okay, so that is my opinion on water. The next thing is 10 pages of a self-help book. This one, I was saying a lot throughout 75 Hard that was one of the hardest parts of 75 Hard for me, which I know sounds so silly and stupid because it's probably the easiest part for a lot of people, but I am a podcast listener. I like visuals and I like to listen. So if you're going to teach me something, put it in a short clip on TikTok, put it in a YouTube video, or put it on a podcast. Like, that is how I consume things. Now, if you come to my house, you'll see that I have a bookshelf downstairs full of 800 million books. And in my office, I am staring at my bookshelf right now of a million different books. And here's the thing. I like to read books, but I don't always finish books. I don't even always read them start to finish. And I want to become a better reader. It's a part of my goals in 2024 to become a book reader, because I mean, I read books here and there, but it's pretty rare to see me read one start to finish. So I do have a Kindle. So I got my Kindle all hooked up and I made sure that I had my book downloaded and I got a library card and like got all that set up. I actually did this before the end of the year because I knew I was going to be doing 75 Hard. So I was all prepped to go, and just prioritizing reading was a challenge for me because in my schedule that I made up for myself that I tried to follow every day, I pretty much saved the reading part for the evening, which I think was my problem for me and why reading became such a challenge, because I literally fall asleep the second I start to read. And I posted on Instagram one day, like me falling asleep reading my Kindle. And I was saying how this says a lot about my nervous system. And like, it truly does, because I swear I start to read and I just knock out immediately. And so reading just became really hard for me because I kept reading, and then, I don't know, the first 5 pages I could get through, and then all of a sudden I'd be reading and my eyes would just like drift, and then I'd be like forcing them open trying to read these pages and then trying to retain what I was reading. And then the next day I would go to read my book and I would have to literally reread 5 pages. And so I kept basically reading 5 pages a day because I could retain 5, and then I'd read the next 5 I was falling asleep during, and then the next day I'd have to start at the ones that I like was falling asleep during. So that was becoming a challenge for me. I mean, moving forward, I would just prioritize the reading like as soon as possible, honestly. There was a point where I was like, okay, I'm just going to get as much of these tasks done first thing in the morning. That way I can just live my life, which I don't think is the point of 75 Hard. But I honestly had days where I was like, okay, go and do your workout class, come home, walk your 45 minutes. This is what I should say that I ended up doing is I started just counting my audiobook as reading, which I'm like fully for audiobooks. So I know some people are like, that doesn't count. It fucking counts. As long as you're learning something new, that's the whole point of reading. It matters. So I was listening to my book on my audio book. And so I would habit stack, which they say is a huge part of building healthy habits. If you've never read Atomic Habits, which I've actually never read before, I just know the lessons from it because I feel like I've seen, like I said, I'm very visual. I've seen a lot of videos on Atomic Habits, and I've seen some graphics on Pinterest before breaking down the lessons of Atomic Habits. So nonetheless, I'd love to read that book though, but I just started habit stacking. And so I was like, okay, I will go on a walk. I'm going to listen to my 10 pages as I'm driving from my workout and when I'm on my walk. And so bada boom, bada bing, there is 3 out of the 6 things. There you go. That's half of them. So that's what I was doing. That's my thoughts on the reading. It's probably going to be easier for you than it was for me because I'm not a reader. And allow yourself to listen to an audiobook and don't do it right before going to bed. Maybe a few hours before going to bed, midday while you're eating your lunch. I don't know what it is. Maybe you can walk on a treadmill and put your book up. I don't know how you like to do it, but that would be my advice. Okay, so now let's talk about the diet. So here's where it gets kind of tricky with 75 Hard. So you can follow any diet that you want. It's not a strict rule, which it was so funny because we were out to dinner with Xander's coworkers recently and they were like, oh my gosh, you guys can't have any sugar and alcohol and all these things. And I was like, no, like you can follow any diet that you want. So for me, I did just no gluten. Xander did no sweets and no chips. And like we both chose something that was relatively a challenge. I probably could have done no dairy and that really would have been a challenge for me, but gluten was something that I've been suspicious about in my own diet for like a minute. I've kind of played with gluten in my diet before when I've done Whole30 and when I did the medical medium challenge, and I also was doing grain-free for a hot minute. I've never done keto. I don't really subscribe to keto, but gluten-free has been something that I've noticed here and there some pretty positive effects on my own body and health and everything. So I was like, I'm going to do no gluten. I've never fully done no gluten in my life. So we'll see how this helps me. And I'll say the diet was the absolute easiest part. And I feel like that's can definitely be some people's hardest. It was really easy for me because I realized that I actually eat pretty gluten-free for the most part. During the week, we don't really eat a ton of bread. We eat a ton of rice, and rice is gluten-free. I also learned, and I feel like people who don't know what gluten is need to maybe do a Google search or two, because so many people are like, you can't have rice, that's gluten. People think gluten means carb. It doesn't mean carb. Absolutely 2 different things. Gluten is wheat, barley, rye, soy. Rice is just a grain, and rice is completely gluten-free. So I consume a lot of rice, and yeah, we just don't have a lot of gluten in my household. Even like some of my favorite snacks are gluten-free. I love these Simple Mills almond crackers. We get that giant box from Costco, and those are gluten-free. So I was like, okay, slay. Potato chips are gluten-free. Not that I wanted to eat a bunch of potato chips, but when I just wanted to have a treat, I could still have potato chips. So that was the easiest part of it all. With Xander, I think his was pretty easy. He did no chips. He eats like cleaner than I do, and he just wanted to challenge himself a little bit. And he did no sweets, but like he still let himself have a protein bar that was chocolate flavored or something, but no desserts essentially, which it was hard for him because it was his birthday in the beginning of 75 Hard, and I love ice cream. So that was hard for me, him doing that, because like not having my ice cream companion is challenging. If any of the girls are listening, even guys maybe too, you know what it's like when you want to have dessert and then your significant other doesn't want to have dessert with you. That's the worst feeling in the world. So that was kind of hard because I had to just eat ice cream by myself a couple times, and I just felt lame and not good about myself. So anyway, gluten was easy. Going out to eat was challenging. There's a couple times you're out at restaurants and the manager had to come by and be like, are you gluten? Do you have celiac or is this a preference? I'm like, it's just a preference. You guys don't have to prepare my food in a special area or anything. Like, we're good. And gluten is technically in soy sauce. I kind of let that slide a little bit because I don't think a lot of people know that. And I definitely did, but there was a couple times we literally went to Korean barbecue during 75 hard and there was nothing for me to eat at Korean barbecue. And I was like, there's technically not wheat in any of this, but there's like soy, but it's like very small amounts of gluten. And I know I don't have an allergy to soy. So I was like, it's fine. Like, we're going to be okay. So I just kind of let that go. And the other time I accidentally had gluten was over Valentine's Day. I had some candy at a friend's place and I didn't realize that gluten was in candies because a lot of candies are made of wheat. So there's a couple times where I accidentally had it and I had a stomach ache from it. And now that I've been off 75 hard, I have had gluten and gluten is giving me a really bad stomach ache. So I probably won't consume gluten moving forward, but very sparingly. Funny enough, during 75 hard, I craved cake like a psychopath, confetti cake specifically. That's all I wanted the entire 75 hard. I did treat myself to a birthday cake pop from Starbucks, and it was honestly the most divine, best thing I've had in a minute. If you haven't had one of those in a while, go to Starbucks and get one. They're so good. I had 2 days in a row because I was like, this is the best. And yeah, it's all given me a stomach ache since I've had gluten. So yeah, lessons learned. So you'll learn something about yourself if you do this. Okay, let's move on to the next rule, which is no alcohol. I feel like I want to do a podcast dedicated to alcohol at some point. I could probably talk about this part of 75 hard completely by itself because this was the biggest thing for me and it has been a big thing for me for a minute. So during 75 hard, you can't have alcohol. You can't have any form of alcohol. And I had Amanda Kuda on the podcast. Amanda Kuda is someone who is a sobriety coach. And I had her on for her to promote her book called Unbottled Potential. She shared her experience on the podcast about her work in the world with helping people remove alcohol from their life and find their potential. Specifically, she works a lot of times with people who are spiritual people and want to redefine what that relationship looks like. And so I was really inspired by her, but even before her being on the podcast, I've always had this weird relationship with alcohol. If you guys didn't know, I have an alcoholic in my immediate family, and I've talked maybe a little bit about that. And for like personal family reasons, I will not go deep into it at this point in my life on my podcast, but there's someone very close to me who is an alcoholic and that's affected my entire life. And I grew up in a family of, alcoholics, alcoholism on both sides of my family, extended family. And alcohol just continues to be something that has ruined a lot of lives and has, taken the potential from a lot of lives in my family and, even maybe sometimes in myself. And I don't think that I have a problem with alcohol. I don't think I've ever had a problem with alcohol other than maybe when I was in college and everyone had a problem with alcohol. I've struggled with my relationship with alcohol a lot because I see how much it hurts people and impacts their lives. And for me, I'm telling these people to stop drinking and I'm telling them if they just removed alcohol, it would be okay. But I haven't fully done that in my own life. And so I kind of battle with my relationship with it a lot. I'm someone who's a little bit more anxious when I drink. After I drink, I definitely get the anxiety. I don't feel good. I feel like I'm hungover for literally 4 days. I'll drink on a Friday and literally not feel better until Thursday. And so I did a cleanse a couple years ago, the medical medium liver cleanse, and that felt really good. And I've gone months without drinking before where, I've had a weird experience with alcohol. And so I take a break from it. And I've been doing that pretty consistently since 2019. But I've had this very unconfident relationship. I don't know if that's the right word, but I've had a very unconfident relationship with alcohol for a while. And a lot of my friends have noticed this. A lot of people close in my life have noticed this. No one's ever really said it to me, but I'm sure they do. I will have weekends where I'm yeah, I'm not going to have a glass of wine when I typically would have a glass of wine, or I'll just kind of pick and choose when I'm drinking and when I'm not drinking. And I think it just throws people off because it's super inconsistent and I have no real boundaries or rules with why or how or what are my decisions around it. And so I've lacked confidence in my relationship with alcohol because there will definitely be weekends where I'm like, oh my gosh, let's go get drinks somewhere. Like, let's go girls, let's go to happy hour. And we have, cocktails all night and it's super fun and I have a really great time. And then the next weekend I get invited to do the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not drinking. I don't want to drink. I don't like alcohol. And so I'm sure it's annoying for other people, but I've just kind of struggled with my relationship with it in terms of how does this fit into my life and how does this fit into my spirituality? Specifically, like I talked a lot about my psychic mediumship journey. Actually, I haven't talked a lot about it, but I had an episode dedicated to it. And I started channeling last year, talking to literally dead people and doing lots of work with like the spirit world, spirit guides, past loved ones, and just a lot of like really deep energy work. And I know that with alcohol, it really impacted my energy work. There was a couple things that were happening just to like give you guys some insight, because I know a lot of you have a lot of questions on this. After I drink is when I have a lot of spirits come through to me. And specifically when I'm hungover. Like if I drink one night, the next morning I'm in bed and there's just like spirits bugging me. So that's not fun, and I didn't like that. So I also wanted to change that. And then the other thing is, a couple times while I'm drinking, alcohol lowers your inhibitions. I also all of a sudden channel really quickly when I'm under the influence of alcohol. And there were 3 or 4 times that I gave mediumship readings to friends of mine's past, loved ones or people that they knew who died. And I felt icky the next day that I was under the influence when those interactions happen, because I feel like I can't really explain the relationship between like spirit world and physical world when I'm in those interactions. And so it just became a little bit of a challenge for me personally and how I was managing just the energy work that I do with alcohol. And so what I'm trying to say is, because I could do an entire podcast dedicated to my relationship with alcohol, which I'll do someday, is that I have been wanting a break from it. So the no alcohol piece was one of the easiest parts of 75 Hard for me towards the end. But in the beginning of 75 Hard, it was really challenging. And it really had me thinking about my relationship very close up. I feel like I had a zoomed in lens on how I feel about alcohol. And why it was challenging in the beginning is because first, it was Xander's birthday, and he didn't even drink as he was doing 75 Hard. It was really easy for him not to drink. He has no problems with cutting alcohol out of his life. Then my family came to visit, and, we love to get together and have drinks, especially when they're here on vacation. It was my sister's 30th birthday, and we got together for her party, and I didn't drink the entire time they were here. And, I didn't let anyone pressure me, and no one tried to. Everyone was beyond supportive in my life, and I'm really thankful for that. But it was really hard the night of my sister's 30th to not drink. I was so bored at my sister's 30th birthday party because my family members are drinking. I knew no one. I was exhausted and I didn't have the social bandwidth to banter with people I didn't know. And, the people I knew were really busy. My sister had her kids there and she was busy with that. My dad was talking to people he knew. And my sister was obviously, her and her husband were talking to their friends. So I literally was I don't know who to talk to. Xander couldn't make it because he had to work. So I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could drink just to feel like I could have some energy to talk to people. So there were a couple moments in the beginning where I was like, this is really hard. And most of the time it wasn't hard, but there were then a few weekends that it was also a challenge where my friends were doing stuff and I just didn't want to stay out. So I spent a lot of time in 75 Hard evaluating friendships and thinking about why certain people are my friends and what relationships do I have with certain people and why are they the people that I go to for certain things, and what do I wish was different about my relationships, or can this relationship continue without alcohol? I thought about a lot of that stuff, and that was actually really hard for me. In that process, I ended up just revealing a lot about myself and who I am as a friend, and feeling lots of shame and guilt as the person that I've been in friendships, and also the friendships that I have and what they're based on. And I haven't ended friendships, and I don't really plan to do anything like that. I just really felt like I had a zoomed up lens on, relationships in my life. And I think it was really necessary, but it's also given me a new perspective on ways to get together with friends. And it's actually given me some excitement to find new ways to get to know my friends on a deeper level, the ones that I tend to, go out with and stuff. So that wasn't very quick, but that's just my experience with the drinking part and alcohol. But I will say that, like, my advice for anyone doing 75 hard, like, that's going to be the hardest thing in the beginning, but just stick with it. Something I heard in the beginning that really helped me: once you go to 2 events that you normally would be drinking at and you don't drink, you'll have the confidence to never drink again. And like, that's so true, because after 2 major events, Xander's birthday party and then my sister's 30th, I felt really confident not drinking everywhere else that I went. But I will say something, I have a confession. I did drink a few weeks ago. So right before 75 hard ended, I did consume alcohol. And so I know that technically I would have failed, but I didn't let myself fail. I let myself have a glass of wine, and then I was like, it's fine, we'll pick back up tomorrow. And like, that happened 2 or 3 times in 75 hard, where I had a glass of wine with a friend, and then, I let myself pick it up. But that was towards the end of my journey with it. I ended up going 53 days without alcohol. And here's what I think moving forward. I don't know that I'm like going to remove alcohol from my life. And from a spiritual standpoint, I talked a little bit about my struggles, and that's something that I'm working through on my own. Overall, I thought a lot about like the purpose of life and celebration. And I don't want to live a life where I can't have a balance of like having a glass of champagne and a piece of cake at a celebration. And, I know some extreme health nuts, which I follow a lot of and I'm inspired by a lot of, would not agree with that, but that's just my health philosophy. I don't want to live a life where I'm going to a celebration and I feel like I can't have a glass of champagne to celebrate someone or something, and I can't have a piece of cake either. Like, those are just some of the simple pleasures in life, and we have to just enjoy those, and not to have alcohol every day and champagne and cake and things every day, but just to find that moderation. And I think it's all about balance. And so for me, I'm prioritizing balance, and I'll continue to do that my entire life, regardless of my spirituality. I think there's a world where you can be spiritual and you can have alcohol, and the two can exist. And so there's just a lot of energy protection and things to do when it comes to spirit world. And that's what I'm focusing on, and building even more intention around my relationship with alcohol. So that's just my thing with alcohol. And then, the last part, which we're wrapping up here, and then I'm going to go through your guys' questions to make sure I answered them, and then to give you guys like my overall lessons and recommendations, is the progress picture every day. I didn't necessarily do this. This is what I did instead. So I did my gratitude journal every single day of 75 hard, which tracked my gratitude and some progress on how I was feeling. And I thought that was more important than how I looked, because I didn't do 75 hard to look a certain way. I did 75 hard to feel better and to find more discipline in my life and to challenge myself and learn about myself. I don't need to take a photo of myself every day. I was doing those wrap-up photos, as I mentioned in the beginning, and those were also kind of like my progress picture, but I never weighed myself in the beginning. I had an idea of what I weighed at the beginning, but I never did, and I ended up weighing myself about halfway through, and I had gained 4 pounds, which is probably from the muscle that I gained from doing Pilates. So yeah, I just was like, I don't need to look at body image stuff. Okay, before I dive into these questions, my overall just like thoughts on 75 hard, and I think this is the most important part of this episode. So I do and do not recommend 75 hard, and this depends on who you are and how you live your life right now. So Xander and me live very healthy lifestyles. If you follow me or know anything about the way that I eat and consume things, like, I am very healthy. We both work out, and I'm just going to speak for myself actually, but Xander adopts this probably times 10, but like, I work out already 4 days a week. I already eat really clean. Like, I already was basically eating gluten-free without realizing it. I take care of my spirituality and my physical health and my emotional health, and I have a lot of joy in my life, and doing something this extreme removed all flow and truly just like happiness out of my life. I truly felt miserable during 75 hard. I explained what I followed and how I did everything, but I was a bitch during 75 hard. Not to anyone else, but to myself and to Xander, which is funny because I think I shared this recently. The one day he was like, if this is you being a bitch, then I can't imagine what you actually are as a bitch. But I just felt miserable and so irritable the whole time. I felt like it got in the way of, again, the flow and balance of my life. I felt like I couldn't do things the way that I want to do them, in terms of there's days where you just want to chill and relax and take care of your body. My family was in town and I didn't even get to celebrate as much with them, as because I was prioritizing when my workouts would be and trying to fit those in to my schedule versus spending time with my niece and nephew. I didn't drink at certain celebrations, which is fine, and you don't have to do that. But there were moments where I was like, it felt right and I wish that I could have. I had to skip out on cake at someone's birthday. And, there's just like little things like that. You're almost like, what is the point of life? And I know, again, some people are way more extreme than I am, but it really had me thinking about the purpose of life and celebration and gathering and like dinner parties, which I love dinner parties and things like that. And so it just removed a lot of joy and created a lot of structure in my life when I don't thrive on structure. And again, that's in my human design. And if you're curious if you thrive on structure, hit me up and we can do a reading together and I can walk you through your chart and tell you. But like, I just don't thrive in that. And so like, it made me realize how much of my design that I am, because I just felt imbalanced and I was just mad the whole time. Truly, I couldn't wait for it to be over, which is why I started bending some of the rules, because I just was like, I'm miserable and I know it's a mental challenge and I can stick to something, trust me. But like, I just felt like it was not sustainable and I don't feel like it's a healthy exercise. And I do potentially think that if you are a male, this might work for you, but as a female, I really don't recommend it. That being said, where I do recommend 75 hard is because I said there's a group of people that I can recommend this to, and this is why I think it's had a positive impact on a lot of people, is that if you are not living a healthy lifestyle and like you need something to kickstart you, I think 75 hard can be a really great way to really change your life. If you don't work out and you don't follow any sort of diet and you are kind of haphazard about the way that you eat and you just like make a lot of excuses in life, I think this is a great reset. And so if you need, again, that push, this would be really good for you. And I could see how it could change your life, make you feel and look better. But I already feel really good. I already work out pretty consistently. Again, I already do a lot of the things in 75 hard, just like in different ways. And so I feel like it got rid of that flow and balance in my life. And so the other thing for me is that it just brought out this all or nothing approach that can lead to perfectionism and overachieverness that I think is incredibly unhealthy. And especially for someone like me, it's not something that's good for my mentality. And I know that clinically. So like, it brought out the worst in me, if I'm being honest. That's just my take though. And I feel like it's very different from what people expect, but let's go into your guys' questions and just see what you guys think. So the first one is, how much extra time is it compared to your normal routine? I kind of already talked about this, but for me, it was extra time in my routine that I had the time for. I just didn't like making the time for it. But like, I already was working out, 3 to 5 days a week. So I feel like the first workout was really easy. And then with the sun setting also really early because it's winter, that was a bit of a challenge, but ultimately it was just more time away from stuff that I like to do. So yeah, that would be different for everyone. But yeah, compared to my normal routine, like definitely probably took an extra 2 or 3 hours out of my normal routine that I typically would just be working. Okay. Did you ever get sick or feel sick? I did not get sick on 75 hard. I think 75 hard prevented me from getting sick, which is a pro from it. I felt myself getting sick 2 or 3 times during it, and not like a physical sickness I guess it was a physical sickness, but not like I'm going to throw up. It was more like I'm starting to feel like maybe sniffly or like everyone around me is getting sick. And I didn't end up getting sick. I think my immune system was really strong on 75 hard. But yeah, and I never felt sick during it. I felt really tired. I should have talked about that in the workout piece. My body hurt the entire time. Like my body was so sore from working out and it just wanted rest more than anything. And so yeah, I was really tired during 75 hard. Someone asked, are you exhausted? I was exhausted. Yeah. So on that note, I was exhausted the entire 75 hard. So was Xander. We both were like, our bodies are just tired. Towards the end, it got pretty normal, but like, yeah, we were exhausted. Another question is, was 75 hard worth it? Yeah, because I have all these revelations, but again, I'll probably do it differently. Actually, I'll share it with you guys right now, what I would do differently. So with the workout piece, I would do just 2 pieces of movement a day. Actually, the way that I will do it moving forward is 10K steps a day and then a workout. So as long as you're getting your steps in and then doing a movement or workout, that's good. It doesn't have to be outside. I would do probably just a half a gallon of water a day. And that's just because of my small bladder and what works for me. I would continue to do the 10 pages of a self-help book, but also like a self-help podcast or an audiobook would count. For the diet, I continue to think that that's up to whoever does it, but I would probably continue to do no gluten, and maybe no dairy would challenge me in the future. But yeah, I would do that. And then I would probably be relaxed on the weekend, but I think that's not the point of a challenge. Like, you can't pick the days that you're doing something. I think it has to be every day. So yeah, I would probably just do no gluten and maybe no dairy. I would continue to do the no alcohol piece. I think that's important. And then I would not do a progress photo every day. I would do a gratitude journal. That would be my version of 75 hard if I had to redo it for people working with their bodies. Another question is sobriety in social settings where others are drinking. Yeah, that was really hard. I absolutely hated going out with people when I wasn't drinking. One of the nights we went out and we were at a little bar with our friends. We were at Billy's in Newport Beach, Billy's, and they have Mai Tais and they're so good. And like everyone was drinking. You could just tell when people started to get like a little more drunk and when they're not hearing you or paying attention to what you're saying. And then you're just like, okay, I'm ready to go home because we're at different levels, and you just can't have a good conversation with people. There gets to a point where like they can be drinking, you're having a conversation, but like when they're drinking more and more and you're not, you can't really hold a conversation, and neither can they, and that's okay. But if you're both drinking, like you can typically hold like a disillusion conversation a little bit more. Yeah, that was really hard. My advice is mocktails are good, but I think all the mocktails I tried during 75 hard were disgusting. So I would opt for a Poppy or an Olipop. I think those are delicious. I drank a million of those on 75 hard. I also love like flavored sparkling waters like LaCroix, so I would opt for something like that versus the mocktails because they're just full of disgusting sugar. Then just like avoid social settings or just be prepared or have something in your hand like a piece of candy. Try to eat, just have a fun drink. If you want to drink soda, go for it. Again, that's not healthy either, but like do something to make you feel normal and then probably just leave when it gets to a point where you're not having fun. How do you feel it impacted your relationship with food? I just did gluten-free, so my relationship with food, just with me doing the gluten-free on 75 hard, is that like I'll continue to be gluten-free primarily moving forward. I noticed a huge difference when I started eating gluten again. I felt way better and less bloated not having gluten, so I will most likely continue to be gluten-free. And then, like I mentioned earlier, if I'm at a friend's birthday and there's confetti cake, I'm gonna have a piece of cake. Or if I'm in Italy and we're gonna eat pasta, you know? But overall, my relationship with food, it just showed me that I think I do better gluten-free. But if I tried something different with the diet, I would probably learn something else. Okay, and then favorite part of the experience, will you do it again? My favorite part about 75 hard is just simply what I've learned. Also that I discovered Pilates and started doing Pilates and I feel really strong and really good. I love that I felt really clear. I had that clarity that you get when you don't drink. Felt like strength in my body. I felt what it feels like to have discipline. So those are like just some of my favorite parts. But I have more cons than I do pros. But, you know, in terms of, again, will I do it again? I won't do 75 hard again. I would do 30 hard maybe. I think Alex Earl did this. She's a famous internet star. I would do like a 30-day version of it. So instead of 75 days, I would do 30 days 100%, and I would keep the normal rules. I think that would be enough of a challenge and would change someone's life. 75 days is a lot of freaking days. And so if I were to do it again my way, like what I said earlier, I could do that for 75 days, but like only my versions. I won't do it the way that it's supposed to be done. And not that I fully did anyway, but I wouldn't do it the way that it's supposed to be done in the future. And honestly, I think that it's something fun for everyone to try out if you want to. That is already a really long episode. I only thought this would be 30 minutes because I've been talking to my friends about my journey and I feel like I had it wrapped up, but I definitely ended up talking and going on some tangents. So I hope that this was helpful for anyone who's interested in doing 75 hard. If you have any questions about my journey that I didn't answer, feel free to send me a DM and I'll be happy to answer that for you. But yeah, that is my journey. And I wanted to remind you that if you're listening, today is the first day of my live round of Human Design Mastery. I'm so excited to kick off our first call of 15 weeks. If you did not get a chance to join Human Design Mastery and you'd like to jump in, even if you're listening to this after March 27th, let me know. I would be happy to pop you into the course and you can join the live round with us. But there is also a self-paced course available at all time that you can get into as well. But I would love to have you, and yeah, let me know if that sounds good to you. But otherwise, I will leave you to it. And thank you so much for listening and have a great evening, day, or morning, wherever you are. And bye-bye. If this episode has energized you, I ask you to share it or to send it to someone where it can make a big difference in their life. And please tag me with your shares, something you learned from this episode or that you loved from it. I'm at The Design of You on Instagram. Also, please DM with questions or feedback or whatever. I love to stay in touch with you. Thank you so much for your support, and consider subscribing to this podcast and leaving me a 5-star review so we can continue to grow together. Thank you, and I love you oh so much. See you soon.